On this episode of Healthline, we're discussing the precautions the county is taking to prevent viruses like Zika and West Nile that are spread by mosquitoes. The county is monitoring and controlling the mosquito population by using traps, sprays, and larvicide. And the county is promoting the Tip and Toss campaign. We'll discuss the details of those prevention efforts and what you can do at home. That's next on Healthline. Hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Vaughn, host of Healthline. Thank you for joining us. You know, the Zika virus seems to be all over the news these days. Today, we hope to bring some awareness to the facts about that virus and dispel some misconceptions. When the rain falls, water accumulates, and experts say that stagnant water makes the perfect spot for mosquitoes to lay eggs. To help prevent mosquito breeding grounds, the county is promoting a new campaign. It's called Tip and Toss.
The importance of tip and toss is ultimately prevention and control of mosquito production.
The health department says using the tip and toss method is one way residents can help prevent the Zika and West Nile viruses. Meanwhile, the county is doing its part as well.
Well, the county is doing a lot. We already have a Zika control prevention team and plan already in place. And we have outreach workers going out to the community and sharing information about tip and toss and also about Zika virus information.
The Environmental Health Division is also coordinating efforts to monitor the mosquito population by placing 12,000 mosquito traps around the county. Those mosquitoes caught in the trap are tested to see if they are carriers of any of the viruses.
Worst case scenario, if they test a mosquito from a certain catch basin and it does come up positive, then obviously they would spray heavily in that area because there's a positive mosquito for West Nile or Zika in that area.
If any of the tests come back positive, environmental health team members go door to door within a half-mile radius of that trap to alert residents of a positive test. So far, so good. No mosquitoes have tested positive this year in Fulton County. The health department says using mosquito repellent that contains the substance DEET, that's D-E-E-T, is highly recommended. You can also call 404-613-1391 if you have any concerns. And joining me now to talk more about the virus is our Deputy Director of Health Services, Dr. David Sarno. Dr. Sarno, welcome to Healthline.
Thank you, Lynn, and thanks for having me.
Happy to have you with us today. First of all, let's give our viewers a definition of what the Zika virus is.
All right. Well, in scientific terms, the Zika virus is actually a flavivirus related to West Nile, yellow fever, dengue, and a few other viruses of its class that's carried specifically by the Aedes species of mosquito. In plain English, that basically means that we have a fairly common virus type that is transmitted by a fairly common mosquito type that actually lives here in our region.
And well, let me just interject here. I understand that it's not new either.
Oh, not at all.
Zika's been around for a while. It just blew up over the last couple of months.
A lot of it, I think, has been because of our awareness of it and an increase in transmission in the areas where it sort of originated in the equatorial parts of the world. But starting to see, because of our ability to rapid transit around the world, starting to see the disease pop up in places where it wasn't. But yes, you're absolutely right. The virus has been known around for over 2 decades.
Now, we're familiar with West Nile. We've been talking about that here in the Atlanta area, and that can make most people ill. But who's at risk? Who suffers the most harm if they get the Zika virus?
Well, in theory, anyone who can be bitten by a mosquito can be at risk for Zika. But I think what we're looking for is here, who's likely to actually have a problem with it. In terms of the severe types of symptoms from Zika, your most at-risk populations are going to be your senior citizens, anybody with chronic illness or immune deficiency, and in a special case that we'll talk about, I think, a little more is pregnant women because of some issues with it. But there isn't a particular population that's more susceptible to the disease. It's just how is the disease going to affect them.
And how does it manifest? What are the symptoms of it?
The symptoms are very commonly shared by many other things, and unfortunately are very nonspecific. Like so many other diseases in its class, the symptoms of the disease strike what we like to call a flu-like illness. So basically headache, fever, body aches, muscle aches, maybe a rash, the same type of thing you can get from the flu, from a cold, from any number of other diseases. So once again, most people won't even know they have it or won't seek or even need treatment for it.
Okay, and that other, other problem that we are aware of is that pregnant women have a real specific danger that they need to be on the lookout for.
Yes, even when we're talking about something that's relatively rare, if it's something like in this case that's easy to prevent or to work on preventing, then it becomes a concern for us. Pregnant women, especially in the first trimester, there's evidence of a link between Zika virus infection and certain birth defects, to include microcephaly. It's an extremely rare side effect, but it's something that, because it's a relatively easy thing to prevent, that it's important for us to do something about. So, knowing that, that's where, when we're talking about whether or not to get treatment, we look at that one particular population differently.
And now we also know that it can be transmitted not just by being bitten, but by someone being bitten and passing it on through intimate relations or sexual relations. Is that correct?
The primary method of transmission, of course, is mosquitoes. And the mosquito bites an infected person, the mosquito becomes infected, and when they bite another person, they have the chance of passing the infection on. There's some evidence now of sexual transmission that can happen for this virus. So it's a special precaution when either half of a partner goes to endemic area or potentially has symptoms of the disease. And again, with sexual transmission, the biggest risk, again, is in our pregnant or pregnancy age women.
Now, do you scientists know how this flared up? I believe it was Brazil last year 2015, that it began to just really be a big issue. Is there any evidence about what happened there?
There was an observed increase in a number of birth defects in Brazil. Above what they assumed the baseline would be. At the time, there was no definitive linkage to Zika, and it's still uncertain what percentage of that increase in birth defects is because of Zika. However, it was sort of the red flag that got people looking at Zika and looking at where it was transmitted and where it was going to end up being. And again, with modern rapid transportation around the world.
We are in a global society, aren't we?
There's
everybody's traveling everywhere.
Thing really as a regional disease anymore.
Now, one of the main differences I understand between the mosquito that carries West Nile and the mosquito that carries Zika is the different times of day that they feast on us. So tell us about that.
There actually is some crossover, but traditionally, with most of our mosquito-borne illnesses, we tend to think of our dawn and dusk biters. So if any of you have been in your backyard, I am sure you've noticed that if you decide to go out right around sunset time, there's a lot more buzzing going on right then. The species that carry Zika are day biters. I still think, in general, because the number of mosquitoes tends to be greater at dawn and dusk, the risk of getting bitten is greater at dawn and dusk, but you can't assume that you're safe because, it's midday, so that mosquito's not out biting right now.
So tell us a little bit about what we're doing, because we have a very vigorous effort to keep people safe.
The county?
Yes.
Yes. There's a couple of different things that we're doing. There's two ways to go at this. One is obviously to try to avoid getting the infection. The other is to try to control the mosquito population. Okay. So from the mosquito control perspective, we have a vigorous mosquito control program. I know you mentioned in your opening segment that we have thousands of test sites that we're actually speciating mosquitoes and testing them for virus. We also, and these are coordinated to where our spray sites are. And as Mr. Jones mentioned in the opening segment, if any mosquito comes up positive for anything we're testing, then we're going to concentrate on those areas as well. The other half of the coin is obviously to prevent. The other part of preventing mosquitoes is not just spraying them, but removing their breeding sites. The tip and toss campaign is key in that regard because mosquitoes need shallow, stagnant water to breed in. Running water is not the same. If you have water collecting in...
So not streams?
Streams, unless they're
Yeah,
real slow moving. The
right.
thing with streams to look at is the edges of the stream.
Okay.
A lot of natural streams, you'll notice, have a lot of growth around the edges, and in that area the water tends to stagnate. That's a place where you can actually get larvae. But when, we have these sort of catch pens we use here for water, and we have, there's anything in your backyard that can hold stagnant water can end up being a mosquito breeding site very quickly. So getting rid of any standing water is a key. The other half of prevention, obviously, is to avoid getting bit. We can't all stay inside all day long.
No.
So when we're spending significant amounts of time outside, mosquito repellent is a big thing. And we mentioned it in the opening segment, but preferably mosquito repellent with DEET, any other proven ingredients, but that's our highest recommendation right now.
Okay,
Considering,
but do we need to do that all day long now, or are we not worried about getting bitten now? In other words, there has been no transmission of Zika by way of bites here in the continental U.S.
well, we don't really know
Is that correct? We don't know.
And
Okay.
I think we wanted to talk a little about symptoms in asymptomatic folks. And that's a wonderful segue. For the vast majority of the population, Zika is going to be something they either never get symptoms from or they get very mild symptoms from that they can treat at home. And in terms of who should seek medical attention, that would largely come down to why you would seek medical attention anyway. If you had a bad flu, if you had a bad cold and you were behind the power curve and you needed to go and get medical attention, that would be no different. This one exception, obviously, to that, as we talked about previously, is if you're pregnant, if you may be pregnant, and if either you or your partner have had a history recently of travel to one of the areas in question and you come up with these symptoms, then it's probably worth getting checked out, just to be sure.
Okay. Well, Dr. Sarno, we could go on, but our time is up. Thank you so much for
Well,
being
thank you
with
for
us.
having me.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll learn how the mosquito that can transmit Zika is different from so many others. Back in a moment. And welcome back to Healthline, everyone. I'm Lynn Vaughn. Joining me now to talk more about mosquito-transmitted diseases is environmental specialist Christopher Nichols with our Environmental Health Services Department. Welcome to Healthline, Christopher.
Thank you for having me.
Just learned you're a Tuskegee grad, so
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, happy to have you with us.
Glad to be
Tell
here.
us a little bit more about Aedes aegypti, the mosquito that causes Zika, and how it differs from mosquitoes that transmit other diseases.
Well, generally this particular mosquito is different in shape and size, and is even its habitat. There's another particular species, the Aedes albopicus, which we don't see as often, but it is also a culprit in transmitting the Zika virus. But mostly just like any other common mosquito, these mosquitoes will breed in shallow stagnant bodies of water. They can also live in your home, just like any other common household pest. And usually they'll spend their lifetime within that household, actually near the food source, which unfortunately is people. So that's where they take their blood meal from.
Now, we've been telling people for years, as we were concerned about West Nile, to be very careful about dusk and dawn. How is this mosquito, the one that carries Zika, different in that respect?
Well, generally this mosquito is real active during the day. They do more of their feeding during the day, but they can feed at night, just like with any of the other common mosquitoes. They'll feed. They prefer to stay close to their source, to their food source. So they're more aggressive during the daytime. It's not that they can't bite you at night. They're just really a little bit more aggressive during the day.
Now, we tell our viewers all the time, we larvicide, we spray, we set traps. Let's go through those one by one and explain what is larviciding.
Larviciding is where we try to attempt to attack the mosquito at its most vulnerable stage. The life cycle of the mosquito is it goes from the egg to the larva to the pupa to the adult. Well, the larva is the most vulnerable stage. That's actually the aquatic stage. That's why we recommend that people get rid of standing, stagnant bodies of water, whether it be in a dog bowl, in a bottle, which is trash or junk, or anything that'll harbor water and create standing, stagnant places of water. You want to get rid of those. Most of the time.
What do we do what is the actual physical work that we do to larvicide?
Well, what we do to larvicide is we'll have pellets that contain the actual chemical that will actually arrest and destroy the mosquito or arrest the mosquito in its developmental stage, keeping it from developing further
And we
into
place
an
those.
adult. And we place those in those areas that may be small bodies of water, such as catch basins. We'll also, if people might want to come out, they'll request us to come out and help them larvicide. If we find that we get information from the other agencies once they've sent the mosquitoes out to the labs to be tested, and we find out that there's a high population of the Aedes aegypti mosquito in a certain area, what they may call a hot zone. Doesn't mean there are a large population of the mosquito there. Then we get that information and we know, hey, we may need to go put out more larvicide to help knock down the mosquito population in those areas.
Now, I was fascinated to learn that we have some 12,000 traps, I believe, across the county. I won't ask you for the secret locations, but to what purpose do the traps serve?
Well, the traps serve for us to be able to catch the mosquito so the mosquito can be properly identified and also sent out to a lab to be tested. Because if we can get the identification and know that, hey, this is a particular mosquito that we're dealing with, is this the mosquito that actually is transmitting the Zika, or is just one of the other species that we're not too worried about? Also, the traps will serve to just help us to be able to count the mosquitoes once all this work is done through multiple agencies in labs with technicians. Our community sanitation team is real vigilant in helping to make sure that the traps are well taken care of, as well as other techs and other agencies. So we use that information to make sure that we're getting the proper information and getting the proper results.
And at what point does spraying come into play?
Spraying will come into play to help knock down a large adult populations. If there's large adult populations of especially particular mosquitoes that we're looking for, we'll do spraying. And what spraying does is spraying attacks the adult mosquito by attacking the nervous system and also the digestive system of the mosquito to actually kill the adult and keep it from biting anyone or potentially spreading the viruses that we're concerned about.
Now, lots of people have little flower pots and they sit in little trays and they have little drain holes in the bottom of them. And when you put water in them to water your plants, goes right into the little bowl. What does that? What is our advice for people? I think the whole state now is talking about tip and toss. What's our advice for people on that?
Well, the tip and toss program is where you want to take plants that you may have, if they've got drain holes in them, you want to make sure after you've adequately watered your plant and have looked to see if there's any excess water that has come out. Because remember, these mosquitoes can propagate in less than an inch of water.
Less
it doesn't
than
take
an
much.
inch. Wow.
And the life cycle under optimal conditions, if they have the right amount of water, the right heat source, and of course they got a food source, they can actually reproduce and be ready to be an adult within 5 days under optimal conditions. But in other conditions, and not so good conditions, it may take a couple months. But what you want to do is you want to just get rid of that excess water. You can toss it on the ground, toss it on your sidewalk, because if there were any larvae in there, then the heat from the sun will actually kill those larvae.
Okay.
And get rid
Wonderful.
of them. If you have dog bowls, you want to make sure you're getting rid of those and things. Any source of standing water, you want to make sure you dump it out, get rid of it, turn it upside down so that no rainwater or stagnant water can collect in it.
Well, lots of people want to feed the birds and give the birds water, and they have bird bowls, so that's not a good idea, it doesn't sound like.
Well, once that's over, or you give it a little while after you've seen the birds, take their baths and do what they do, you can empty that water out. Also, if when you're jogging, when you're out exercising, if you have a bottle of water, you don't want to just throw it out in litter, because that little bit of stagnant water that's left in the bottom of that bottle could be just enough for that mosquito to propagate. So put the top on it and throw it in the trash. And get rid
Okay.
of it.
Now, let's go to our spray that we have here too, because that is past that.
Here you are.
You take that.
Yes, ma'am.
We're looking for an ingredient, a particular ingredient on there, and tell us about that.
Well, DEET is one of the common repellents that's used right here in the United States, and that's just to repel the mosquito, because the mosquito can't stand the way it smells. It's just acting as a chemical just to repel the mosquito, to keep it from even lighting on you. And what you want to do is, especially if you're out working in your yard, you want to wear long sleeve, light clothing. It doesn't have to be a heavy long sleeve shirt like mine, but you want to make sure that's a light material, even your light long pants. And then what you want to do is you want to spray this all over your clothing.
Oh, on the
On your-
clothing, not just your.
You can use it on your skin, but there's some that you use on your skin. You want to make sure that it's for use on your skin as well. But you want to spray your clothing, and you want to make sure that you use a generous amount. If you want to get someone to spray your back, you can do that, or you can even pre-treat your clothing, because the DEET will actually has a long-lasting effect on it. And you also
now,
want to
I
make
never
sure
would
that's
have
in
thought about pre-treating. That makes so
yeah.
much sense. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being with us. There's
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having
fascinating
me.
information, and you guys keep up the good work over there
Will
in
do.
Environmental Health Services.
Thank you so much.
Okay, stay with us. We'll be back in a moment to wrap up what we've learned today. We hope you've enjoyed today's show on how and what the county is doing to prevent the Zika virus. The county is monitoring and controlling the mosquito population by using traps and sprays and larvicides. And the county is also promoting and working with the state in the Tip and Toss campaign, which means after every rainfall, you tip over and toss out any stagnant water that might have accumulated in flower pots, pet dishes, or any other items. Remember, it only takes about a week for a mosquito egg to become an adult. Now, to report issues with mosquitoes or standing water, you can call the Fulton County Environmental Health Services Division Mosquito Hotline, and that number is 404-613-1303. That's 404-613-1303. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Lynn Vaughn. We'll see you next time right here on Healthline.